It was the 80s. I was sitting down with my brother watching a movie. Not just any movie. A movie that I probably shouldn't have been watching when, I'm about 5 or 6 years old. I was watching Ghostbusters. And being a kid that's scared easily, maybe this wasn't the best thing for me. But there was something a little distinctive about that movie. Was Sigourney Weaver's character gets out of a little yellow cab in New York City and gazes up at her building. All around, all you could see are these other yellow cabs. And I thought to myself, what the hell is that? I've never seen anything like that. Those like New York cabs. Those are interesting things. Where do they come from? Where do they go? Why are there so many of them? And who makes them? That is the question I had to uncover. I had to find out who made these most nostalgic cabs that were seen in nearly every movie of the 1970s and 80s. That is something we will talk about today. AutoLooks.net Autopod, streaming day or night, coming right at you, right here, right now. Welcome back to the AutoLooks podcast. I'm your host, as always, the doctor to the automotive industry, Mr. Everett J, and today I'm taking a look at those little yellow cabs that you used to see in movies that no longer exist. Yes, we're talking about Checker Motors and the Checker cab. Now, this podcast is coming to you from podbean.com and our host site, www.autolooks.net, for all your corporate websites, podcasts, rated cars, and children's books from the automotive world around us. Stop by and see why the AutoLooks.net website is the one for you. Now, like we said earlier, we're going to be talking about Checker Motors Corporation. Now, if you don't remember the Checker cabs, like I said in my intro, go back to the original Ghostbusters movie. Ghostbusters, the first one. Sigourney Weaver gets out of a yellow cab, and there are literally hundreds of them all over New York City. This was my first introduction to the yellow cab, to the Checker Motors Corporation. Now, Checker Motors has been around since 1922. They were a smaller car company, essentially just built taxi cabs for the world around them. They helped other manufacturers. They specialized in stamping of components for other manufacturers and eventually got into producing cabs. Now, by the 1950s, they had branched out and they had made their own models. 1947, they planned to expand into the passenger car market and away from cabs because they saw the 50s as a growth period. And that's when the Checker Motor Corporation was built on a brand new body. Something that would become synonymous again with the cab companies, but also something you could bring home for your family. They came in sedan and wagon versions. Now, if you remember, the cab versions came as standard 4-door sedan cabs, but they also had the extended wagons for airport and military use. Now, if you go to the Checker Motors website, you'll find new design for new limo versions of the sedan, limo versions of the wagons, and even a truck version of the Checker car. Now, this is something that a lot of kids today won't see and won't recognize. They won't even think about. But you gotta remember, this is a nostalgia piece from back then. This is something that became part of our culture from the 50s all the way up until the early 90s. Yes, some early 90s movies, you would see the Checker cab in it. And why? Why did you see them? They were the car you could not kill. They were the cars that did over 200,000 miles, almost guaranteed since the 50s. They were loved by any cab company out there. And originally, they were just built for Checker cabs, and then eventually became the Checker Cab Company. Now, today, Checker has gone out, and as of 2009, their deal with General Motors to produce a brand new model has fallen through, and there is no plans on bringing them back. January 16, 2009, there you go. They filed for Chapter 11 protection under the U.S. Bankruptcy Court. It's gone. They may never come back. But why not? Why did somebody think of bringing them back even in the early 2000s? Why? Checker was not really one of these big things. Like Packard and Studebaker were one of these big car companies that everybody remembers. Hell, Studebaker, you can still see their name in trees at their original test track. You can still see the original Packard and Studebaker plant in Detroit. Like, these are things that are still around. People could still remember them and still find out about them. Kind of similar to how everybody, even today, knows who Tucker Motors is. How the big three killed them off. Now, Checker Motors isn't one of those names that everybody thinks of, but when you show anybody a picture of a Checker yellow cab, it is one of those history cars, like the outline of a Volkswagen Beetle, Porsche 911, the original Jeep, or even things like the Corvette or microbus. They are a shadow. It's a silhouette that anybody can understand. They see that and they automatically think it's a cab. It's Checker Cab. Now, why should somebody bring this back? Why should Checker Motors be revived and come back today? They didn't do the world's greatest sales with their sedan and wagons back in the day. Sure, they were big and their vehicles went forever, but you gotta remember, they were also small engines. They only used little 4-cylinders. They weren't big engines against the big, beefy V8s that were coming out from the big guy. 4 cylinders. You occasionally move up to the Model G6 or the Model K6 to get 6-cylinder engines, but 4 cylinders were their main purpose. Why would anyone think of bringing these out today? Have you ever heard of a little company that was bought out by Geely Motors? Gotta remember, Geely's one of the biggest electrified automobile corporations in the world. They're one of the first to electrify vehicles for the Chinese marketplace. They own Lotus, they own Volvo, and they also own the most famous cab in the world, the London Electronic Vehicles, the Black Cab. In New York, you had the Checker Cab. In London, you have the Black Cab. Now, Geely knew that the black cabs were famous, and they saw how London was trying to get rid of motorized vehicles from the city's interior. They wanted to become more of a pedestrian-friendly area, and by doing that, cabs became one of the only vehicles allowed in the center without having to pay a fee. Where cities like New York, Chicago, Shanghai, Paris are all looking at possibly doing this similar thing to keep tons of vehicles out of their main downtown core to make it more of a walkable city and a better place to live. Instead of having mass congestion, let's get them out and let's get people out. We'll allow vehicles there. We'll allow pods, autonomous vehicles, delivery vehicles, and cab services. You hear us? Uber and Lyft? Cab services. Geely bought Black Cab and turned it into the London Electric Vehicles Company because they knew these were products that were going to be allowed. And now that they've electrified it, they're allowed even more. And with everyone going to London and wanting to ride in one of these black cabs, they don't even need to sell them to residentials. It doesn't have to be a commercially viable vehicle because the industry for it is already set. We need cabs. Now, cab companies other than London Black Cab, you can't find. But it's like Yellow Cab in New York. Yellow Cab is one of the biggest cab companies in New York, and they were one of the biggest purchasers of the Checker Motors cab, the old Checker Motors Marathon. A little 250 cubic inch V6 engine that just got you around. In today's world, Checker could come back. And with its last ties into General Motors, you almost wonder why General Motors didn't use the Checker Motors nameplate for their Cruze. I get it. They want to move into the future and don't want to bring back that nostalgia appeal. But bringing back Checker Motors, bringing back a new age looking vehicle. I don't know if you've ever seen Citroen or even Morris Motors has antique looking vans. Vans from the 50s and even 40s that are electrified for today's generation. These are brand new vehicles. Hell, even look at the Black Cab. London Electric Vehicles Black Cab. It has a cargo van equivalent and they look the same. They're a little bit more modernized version of the older vehicle. Do that to Checker Motors and bring back the Marathon. You can have a brand new electric cab service company for the North American marketplace. And like the North American Pact that we have for emergency vehicles, why not sign a North American Pact for cabs? Biden's listening. Maybe you should take note and sign a North American Pact for cab companies. So even companies like Uber and Lyft would fall into the gray lines that they must abide by owning North American products. We've already heard that this week that in New York, they're going to be moving Mustang Mach-E's into their cab fleets and emergency vehicle fleets. The whole Buy American thing. Even though they're built in Mexico, you're still going to be able to ride around in them. And we got to remember, Mexico is part of the North American Pact. Canada, US, and Mexico. So bring back Checker Motors. If somebody was smart enough, they'd buy this system out. They'd buy the old designs for it for the sedan and wagon. And if you get into their website, even their truck. Because you got to remember, the world is changing. The world is moving to pod delivery services. They can bring Checker back as an electric or even hydrogen fuel cell to deliver people and products all over North America. Sign the North American Pact. Get these as the main cabs. You can bring them back and create sedans, wagons, minivans, CUV, and ALV. Essentially, Checker could become Canoo Motors. Canoo, if they wanted to move and make themselves a little bit more known of in the world, can change their name to Checker Motors and solidify themselves as a new age version of the Checker Cab Company. Whereas Canoo is building vehicles for ride-hailing service companies for people who drive for Uber and Lyft to be able to pick up and move people around, similar to that of General Motors in their Cruze system. They're also building electrified vans that could be also used as food vendors. They're getting into the trucks now for the all-terrain, off-road, adventurous type people. And eventually, they haven't released it yet, but they have stated it with their original product release, that there will be a sedan. A company like Lordstown or Friday the Future could pick up on that. Even Tesla used the retro Inspire of the old Checker Motors and bring it into today. Gotta remember, Hyundai Justin does this in India. They use a retro-styled British Leyland product as their cabs. Why not do that for the North American marketplace with Checker Motors? And like we said, you can make it a commercial success as well. You don't just have to sell it to those markets. You could do like they originally did. We know that sedans and wagons are kind of dying out, but you create a SUV or an ALV version of it. You can hit markets for people. With autonomous technology, you can create the inner city pods of the future with a retro-inspired design. Geely has woken up to this, and Geely has done this with the London electric vehicles and their black cab. Checker could do this to cement its future, to bring it back. Bring back one of the American icons. Hell, you watch movies even like the newer version of King Kong, where they're in New York and they drive a Checker cab. Checker has been through a lot in their lifetime. Originally started out stamping and creating parts for major automakers, then moving into building their own cabs. Their designs had changed. By the 70s, somebody realized that their designs were getting old. As we know, in the 80s, old school designs were starting to die out. Checker has lived an amazing little life. Back in the mid-70s, they originally thought of teaming up with Volkswagen. They're going to ship Volkswagens to the Checker Motors factory in Kalamazoo and reconfigure them into a brand new Checker Volkswagen cab. This was handled by Road and Track magazine, but unfortunately, this project never got off the ground as they deemed the car not suitable for taxi service and didn't meet their qualifications of quality. Into the 80s, they'd signed deals with General Motors trying to build a brand new successor to the Marathon cab. That didn't go through as Checker realized the citation body was too small for it, and Checker Motors were slowly dying out. So what could they do? What can Checker do to come back? Well, after a couple failed attempts, they were out of options. And eventually, by the early 2000s, Checker was only building parts for General Motors. And its insolvency in 2009 led to most of its tool and die, designs, and even production equipment being moved to my home country of Canada. Yes, Checker Cabs now resides. All of the products that made those now reside in Canada. Its designs for the original car are unknown of. Those are the only thing that we don't know. And that's something that would be good to find out, and be good if we wish to revitalize this company. 1999, New York City retired the very last New York Checker taxi cab. This was all due to a new ordinance passed in 96, which means vehicles must be replaced after 6 years of service, thus putting the Checker cabs out, considering the fact that the last one rolled off the production line in 1982, 17 years earlier. But that last model went to Chicago. Checker could move into the future. They could be one of those companies that comes back. Or, you never know, it could be one of those companies like Detroit Electric. It attempts to make a comeback and yet falls flat on its ass while trying to reinvent itself. Checker was a great product. They're the cabs that lasted forever, and they're the ones that nobody wanted to give up. But unfortunately, as times have changed, the company didn't. And with all great companies, unless you're willing to change and adapt to the future, you're not willing to survive. In survival, it only goes to the fittest. And in this case, Checker was not the fittest, and Checker Motors died out. By 2010, the company was completely gone. No more were its headquarters. No more were its cabs, and no more were anything stamped. Checker was gone. But can it come back? Like we said, could somebody buy it out? Could somebody try and bring it back? Could somebody do this to Auburn, Cord, Duesenberg, Studebaker, Packard, Pierce, Arrow? Like, there are so many great marks to try and bring back. Why would we even consider making a podcast to go after the Checker Motors cab? They built a sedan and a wagon for commercial sales, and everything else was all geared to taxi life. Why would somebody consider bringing back that company? Well, like we said, the future is moving to pods. People are moving into cities, and people are moving away from car ownership. So a company like this could come back, and as long as it hits the market at just the right time to gain a foothold into it, it could survive the future of a city without automobiles. Checker has the makings of a company that could be revitalized for the future of tomorrow, and with people being inspired by retro designs and cliche things from the past, a Checker Motors Marathon cab could be it for the future, and it could be the product that we all want. So in the end, should they bring back Checker Motors? It would be something nice to see. Hell, even if I can get automobile parts companies in Canada, the ones that actually even hold the parts and original engineering feats from Checker Motors to try and rebuild this, there are no plants. The St. Thomas plant that built the last great cab, the Crown Vics, has been leveled. That plant would have been something good to buy when Ford decided to kill off the Crown Vic. They could have utilized that to build the body-on-frame design for a brand new Checker Motors cab, but build it in the electric sense so it's a wave of the future, not something from the past. And by making it electric with a retro design, it is something for the future that came from the past. This is something that North America needs. We do need to accept some of the things from our past as we move into the future. And Checker Motors may have one of those products for us. So if you like this podcast, please like, share, or comment below on any of the social media feeds or podcast pages that you are listening to this podcast from, and let us know what you think about Checker Motors coming back to life as a brand new age electric cab company for the future of the North American marketplace. Or do you think it is best to be left in the past? And while commenting on this, please stop by our website, AutoLooks.net, and check out some of our amazing things. Listen to some of our podcasts, check out some of our shows, watch some of the tidbits, read some of the books, and hell, see who's got the #1 rated vehicle of the year, who's got the worst vehicle rated of the year, and who's copying who from AutoLooks.net. So strap yourself in for this one fun wild ride as we hop aboard our vintage Checker Marathon.